As a proud parent of 4 kiddos myself, I do find it quite appalling to see Toyota supporting events and organizations that really advocate for the legal gender transitions of children. And we're talking individuals under the age of 18. The upsetting part for me is Toyota has gone full woke and they're not even trying to hide it at this point. And I don't care what side of the fence you are on politically, right? But Toyota should only be focusing on one thing, and that's building great vehicles that offer unmatched peace of mind when it comes to reliability, as they always have. I do think that there's value in being critical and value in voicing our opinions and thoughts on this, because if we don't and just roll over and accept it, what are we doing? We're allowing it to continue and we're allowing it to fester. So they're hosting drag show camps for children who identify as LGBTQ+, right? They're hosting those shows, they're hosting these events, DEI workshops, woke trainings within the company itself. I find that quite appalling. So can there be a balance? Absolutely. But when they're overtly including children in it, that's when I think it's a big no thank you. Hey YouTube, Untamed here. So I think a lot of us can agree that Toyota has made a very clear and very purposeful pivot away from their original core values of the company. They have since pivoted to be a little bit more green energy focused, which isn't a terrible thing in and of itself. But holistically, as a company, as a brand, they've left their consumer pretty disappointed at large. So we'll talk through a few examples in this video of how Toyota's pivot to woke culture has really diminished and tarnished brand reputation. Let's get into it. Toyotas of old, like the one right here behind me, used to be very simplistic, very raw driving experience vehicles. They were reliable, simplistic, and affordable, bottom line. Nowadays, they're pushing vehicles a little bit more like the Sequoia here behind me, with a smaller displacement motor in it, a 3.5-liter twin turbo platform with a giant battery pack, taking up the bulk of the cargo space out back here, elevating that cargo space quite a bit. So that's what they get incentivized more for. Smaller displacement motors, turbo strapped to it, battery strapped to it, and they get green credits or carbon credits from the government. So even though the customer didn't necessarily want this or ask for it, they are getting more money by producing it. And they did not get incentivized as much from the EPA to produce these gas guzzling, naturally aspirated V8s anymore. That's a part of it. And with the company being over $242 billion in debt, with the largest leading debt worldwide, it makes sense that they're now pushing production to cheaper labor cost countries like Mexico for the Toyota Tacoma in particular. We've talked about it plenty on the channel, but that's just a prime example, and there is much more to follow, I assure you. So prime example of the Tacoma, that has become a laughingstock amongst the mid-sized pickup truck community, right? We have a very unreliable platform with automatic transmissions falling out of the dang things, terrible quality control, fit and finish is awful in those things, and not to mention no bump stops. You can't even go off-roading without your suspension giving out on you. So not a very reliable platform, and it just ruined the brand name for that Tacoma in particular, which has developed an excellent reputation over the years, but not anymore with that 4th gen. Vehicles like this naturally aspirated V6 5th generation Toyota 4Runner are the reason why Toyota has developed such an amazing reputation amongst Toyota enthusiasts. They buy these because they know they can buy it with unmatched peace of mind that this is always going to start and always going to run for them for 250,000+ miles down the road with minimal maintenance for it. That doesn't generate a huge amount of income for Toyota as a brand at large. It develops a tremendous reputation, right? People love it and they'll continuously buy Toyotas as the years go on, but by buying that vehicle there, you're in a position where you can drive it for 10, 15, 20 years without having to replace it. So that therein lies the issue, right? They want to build vehicles that will only last 3 to 5 years, which are great and plenty fun for a lot of people, but they become throwaway vehicles, forcing people to swap them out every 3 to 5 years, just like what we see with domestic manufacturers oftentimes, right? Between GM, Chevy, Ford, them, right? They build these throwaway vehicles that people swap out every 5 years because it keeps a continual purchasing of vehicles. Unlike that 4Runner there, and unlike this Tundra here behind me, people buy these and they run them until the wheels fall off, which generally takes a couple of decades. I know a lot of you folks are pretty quick to chalk up my videos to Toyota bashing, and really I view it as me being critical of the brand that I love. Look at me right now. I'm surrounded by my 3 personal Toyotas that amount to about $200,000 worth of vehicles. Between the Sequoia, the Tundra, and the 4Runner there, it's about 200 grand. Why would I buy $200,000 worth of vehicles from a vehicle manufacturer that I hate, that I truly hate? I wouldn't. That'd be stupid. So I do love Toyota, and I hope they make some positive changes. But how are they supposed to make changes if we just keep going on with the flow, right? If I'm going to be critical of this new generation of Toyotas coming out, well, I got to buy one in order to be critical of it. It'd be easy for me to blindly hate on it and just love the naturally aspirated V8 and the V6, but that'd be a little bit ignorant, wouldn't it? It's a shame that that new Tacoma has flopped so hard. Same goes for the Toyota Tundra. In 2022, they introduced a new generation of the current generation Tundra, and that has had a slew of problems and people just being wildly underwhelmed by it. The biggest issue of which, of course, is the main crankshaft bearing problem that can ultimately lead to engine failure with it or a loss of motive power. So that has already issued a pretty large black eye to the company in and of itself. But between that Tundra, the Tacoma, even the Land Cruiser, even though the Land Cruiser is still built in Japan, is still suffering from a lot of issues that are becoming pretty well known at this point. I'm afraid they're going to do the same exact thing to the 6th generation 4Runner and ruin that nameplate too, unfortunately. They're going to cram that turbocharged 4-cylinder iForce Max underneath the hood for the TRD Pro in particular, and then charge about $70,000 for it, which is about $15,000 more than the current 5th generation 4Runner TRD Pro, hiking up that price a ton, lessening or making a smaller displacement motor, hybridizing it, and just lessening the quality overall. Pretty disappointing if you ask me. The upsetting part for me is Toyota has gone full woke and they're not even trying to hide it at this point. And I don't care what side of the fence you are on politically, right? But Toyota should only be focusing on one thing, and that's building great vehicles that offer unmatched peace of mind when it comes to reliability, as they always have. But unfortunately, as of late, I don't blame Toyota corporate out of Japan. I blame Toyota USA and their executives at Toyota USA. They're the ones who are becoming a little bit more politically charged in their decisions and the things that they support. Their events, the organizations that they support have very clearly been hyper-liberal lately. And it's not too much of a surprise given the fact that Toyota has made a shift in focusing toward a green energy movement. So that kind of goes hand in hand with more of the left agenda, right? But the problem is it's been overt and in your face totally. So I won't go into detail on it. Instead, I'll kind of encourage you guys to go check out Robbie Starbuck's recently posted video where he kind of talks through a lot of the campaigns and organizations that Toyota is funding and supporting that are very much anti-Republican, right? And overtly anti-Republican. So I find that to be pretty upsetting, not because of the side of the fence I am on, but because it does ostracize a large portion, probably half, of their entire customer base, which is not a smart decision when you're a company as large as Toyota. So given the fact that Toyota does have the largest debt of any company in the entire world, it does begin to make more sense of why they've hiked up MSRPs over 41% since 2019 at this point. Part of that is due to inflation, but a part of that is corporate greed too, if we're being honest with each other, especially when you transition to lesser labor cost countries to build your vehicles and then you spike up the price tags. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that's a big part of the equation. And another part of it is if they do produce vehicles that are quote unquote throwaway vehicles, you can swap them out every 3 to 5 years like Chevys, like Fords. If they do that, that will allow them to bump that bottom line and hopefully get out of debt, because they are at a pretty staggering $242 billion at this point in time. Now, as a proud parent of 4 kiddos myself, I do find it quite appalling to see Toyota supporting events and organizations that really advocate for the legal gender transitions of children. And we're talking individuals under the age of 18. They encourage and really promote that. I find that quite appalling. They're helping fund a lot of pride camps, which is fine, that's okay, but when they start to go over the edge and really start promoting it amongst adolescents, that's when it becomes a problem in my opinion. So they're hosting drag show camps for children who identify as LGBTQ+, right? They're hosting those shows, they're hosting these events, DEI workshops, woke trainings within the company itself. I find that quite appalling. So can there be a balance? Absolutely. But when they're overtly including children in it, that's when I think it's a big no thank you. And again, I do not care what side of the political fence or aisle you are on. I mean that. But my concern is that we are seeing Toyota really push politics lately, and that's a big no-go for a vehicle manufacturer as large as Toyota, for any vehicle manufacturer, but especially Toyota. They should know better. So I find that pretty appalling that they're doing that. They should only be focusing on producing quality vehicles that offer reliability and unmatched peace of mind, right? But instead, they're supporting hyper-liberal agendas right now. And the largest reason, perhaps, I would argue, is because they moved a lot of production to Mexico and they're going to continuously outsource production to lesser labor cost countries. By them doing that, And having a Democrat in office, they're not having any increased tariffs on importing vehicles for the US market. When there is a Republican in office, generally speaking, they will increase and hike up tariffs to charge the auto manufacturers a lot more money, a lot more percentage per vehicle in order to import to the US and sell to the US market. So what does that mean? It just means that they're going to cost a lot more money to produce these vehicles in Mexico and send them up over the border. Instead, it might encourage them to produce them in the US, perhaps as they should. I mean, heaven forbid you build them where you sell them, right? I mean, it does not take a genius to know that a company as large as Toyota should not get overtly involved in politics one way or the other. They should not. By doing so, they're possibly ostracizing half of their target consumer base, right? By them leaning into this hyper-liberal woke agenda, what is that doing? Anybody who is conservative at all will likely boycott the brand and company moving forward. So that doesn't do Toyota any good. So they do need to find that balance, right? And that's a balance that can be difficult to find, but Toyota has very clearly been overt about their political stances lately, and that's pretty pathetic. Now understand, no matter what, when we talk about this, it will ruffle feathers. It's a hot topic, and rightfully so. I think it's very important for us to talk about it though, because we need to be aware of where our money is going when we buy these vehicles. What events, initiatives, organizations are we inadvertently supporting when we buy these vehicles? Here I have, like I said, about $200,000 worth of new Toyotas around me right now. Where did that money go, and what am I supporting? Personally, I don't like the idea of it supporting what Toyota is leaning toward right now. This hyper-liberal agenda of theirs has got to go. I mean, the old saying of go woke, go broke is a very true thing. If you look at any organization who really leaned into DEI, they started failing pretty quickly. Look at Bud Light, right? What happened to them when they went woke? Look at them. Look at their stock right after they went woke. It did not do any good for that company at large. Because I would argue, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I would argue the vast majority of people are not fully in support of really pushing the LGBTQ+ agenda, especially on young adolescents, right? I think we can confidently agree on that. But the problem is, the rub is, a lot of people are afraid to say that because they think that it might inadvertently affect their employment. That tends to be the problem. They're afraid to speak up, even though the vast majority of people do feel that way. I think it's abundantly clear that Toyota is relying on their reputation, right? They're resting on their laurels of the past. They're expecting people to think Toyota, that means reliability, I'm going to buy that. So that brand name recognition, Toyota believes, is going to carry people to buy these new generation Toyotas left and right. But the unfortunate truth is, the harsh reality for Toyota is they're buying them and then quickly realizing that they're not all what they used to be, right? They're not all what they're cracked up to be, and quite frankly, they're not that good at all, and they're definitely not worth that premium price tag. So I wonder though, is Toyota going to make a positive change or pivot? Do you think they'll be receptive to all this backlash happening right now? I don't know. I'm hopeful that they will, because obviously I love Toyota and I want them to make some positive changes with true Toyota enthusiasts in mind. But me, at the end of the day, I'm just a straight white male with 4 kiddos, served in the military, and a PhD. I'm not their target audience, guys. But I do think that there's value in being critical and value of voicing our opinions and thoughts on this. Because if we don't and just roll over and accept it, what are we doing? We're allowing it to continue and we're allowing it to fester, and we shouldn't. Alright guys, we'll wrap up the video there. As always, I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to tune into my videos. If you find any kind of value in these types of topics where we dive in a little bit more candidly, let me know. Let me know in the comment section and let me know your honest thoughts and opinions. Even if you disagree with me, that's okay. I want to hear from you too. Freedom of speech is a beautiful thing, ladies and gentlemen, and I fully support it. So as always, thank you for taking the time to watch. If you find value in this, please consider liking and subscribing. Your support means a lot and it doesn't go unnoticed. Until next time.